Welcome to the Minnesota Association of Realtors e-video resource. My name is Chris Galler. This week we're going to talk about home sellers. Last week, if you remember, we did a profile of home buyers from some research that we did with the National Association of Realtors. The home buyer program is available on our website if you want to review that. Today, though, we're going to focus on home sellers. And again, sellers being half of the marketplace, we want to make sure as you set up your business plans that you're ready and you have information to make those plans. First thing to know is that the median age of home sellers is 43 years old. They had a median income of $90,200. 66% of home sellers were married. 61% had no children under 18 years of age living at home. That's a significant shift over the last 30 years in the real estate market, where we now have a significant number of people without children living at home buying and selling real estate. 55% of sellers traded up to a larger home when purchasing their next home, which also means 45% moved down in the marketplace and didn't buy a larger property. The typical home seller owned their home for 6 years. The typical home was on the market for 10 weeks. These are 2008 numbers as far as the survey goes. They were done last fall. Home sellers in the real estate professional, 52% of sellers contracted one agent before selecting one to assist in the sale. And when they selected a real estate professional, 44% of sellers received a recommendation from either a friend, neighbor, or relative. As we know in the business, recommendations are the strongest way for us to increase our personal business. The reputation of the agent was the most important factor when choosing a real estate professional. 57% of sellers used the same agent to purchase their next home. And another stat that's of interest to you, 94% of sellers reported their home was listed or advertised on the internet. In the home buyer show, you'll remember that we talked about how more consumers in Minnesota than even nationally use the internet to find the home that they're looking for. That doesn't mean they don't use a real estate agent. In fact, those that search for a home on the internet are more likely to use a real estate agent in putting that transaction together. For sale by owners, of course, are a small part of the marketplace, and 8% of sellers sold their home without the assistance of an agent, compared with 13% nationally. So in Minnesota, it is much harder to sell your home for sale by owner. Part of that is due to the internet, because homeowners are looking on the internet, and because companies and the regional MLSs and the MLS in your local area has those properties available. For sale by owners have a much harder time promoting their properties to the general buying marketplace. 70% of for sale by owner sellers reported that they had some difficulty in selling their home themselves, in performing tasks such as understanding and performing the necessary paperwork to complete the transaction, preparing the home for sale, and getting the price right. That's some interesting overview information. Some other stuff that we found out, the method used to sell the home and seller urgency, 89% of sellers in the marketplace used a real estate agent to sell their home. 2% tried to sell it themselves and ended up using an agent anyhow. The important thing, though, is when you get to how urgent was it for the seller. 75% that were very urgent used a broker right away, and 94% that weren't quite as urgent used a real estate broker right away. The people that did have some urgency in the sale had more tendency to try it for sale by owner. In fact, 21% of those that tried it on their own were in a very urgent situation. In this marketplace, that may have some reflect on the short sales and foreclosures. Incentives offered to attract buyers by region. In Minnesota, 70% of sellers did not offer any type of assistance or incentive. Of those incentives that were offered, 20% of sellers did offer to pay closing costs, and 4% used home warranty policies. And then the last thing that we'll talk about is, would the seller use the real estate agent again? 63% said they definitely would use the agent again, and another 13% said they probably would. So we have about 76%, over 75% of the people out there are very, very satisfied with the real estate agent and brokerage firm that they work with. That's important to know, especially since we have another 2% that didn't know whether they would or not. So with that, we'll close this out. We will have the home buyer and seller profile for the Minnesota report available on the Minnesota Realtor website, www.mnrealtor.com. You can download the whole report. There's additional statistics in there and use it as you set up your business plan for 2010. Best of luck.